Welcome to the weekly lesson from Unity Church of Victoria. I'm Vicki Vanderhorst, a licensed Unity teacher. Whether you're a member of our beloved community or just checking us out, we're delighted you found us. If anything you hear doesn't work for you, that's all right. Just simply set it aside. Or, on the other hand, if you hear ideas that resonate with you, take them and apply them and use them to make a positive difference in your life. I hope the lesson you're about to hear will support you on your spiritual journey. This month we've been working with this delightful little book called The Alchemist. And right now we're in our third week of this book. And so part of the story obviously has already passed, and I'm just going to briefly bring you up to date with where we were last Sunday. This shepherd boy named Santiago lives in southern Spain. And he has a recurring dream that there is a treasure for him under the pyramids in Egypt. And he has no idea, really, where Egypt is. But he decides to follow this dream, and he sells his sheep, and he takes all of his gold, and he buys a boat fare across to the coast of Africa. And promptly, within an hour or two of his arriving in this new place, he is robbed of everything that he owns except his jacket. And so what he decides, he comes to this conclusion that maybe that dream, wasn't really his dream. And that if the universe or if God is supposed to support me in my dream, how could this have happened? And really, probably the best thing for him to do right now is to get a little job, earn some money, and go back to Spain. And do what he knows how to do, and what he loves to do is being a shepherd and traveling. So last week we left off at this place where after a year, he had earned enough money to buy his passage back to Spain, and not only that, but to purchase 120 sheep. When he left Spain, he only had 60 sheep. So you could look at this as a success story. He went away, earned some money, he can double his flock, and go back to being a shepherd. And in that moment, when he needs to make the decision, am I going to buy my boat ticket or not, he thinks. Actually, it's not thinking. His heart speaks. It says, there's some caravans leaving for the desert over in this part of town. Maybe I'll just see if they're heading towards the pyramids, perhaps. Well, of course, that's what happens. He goes to the caravans. He sees that they are going to Egypt. He has enough money to buy himself a passage. And so he decides to go ahead with his dream. In that point of decision, though, perhaps you can see yourself. Perhaps there has been a time in your life when what you thought was right and what seemed to be so true for you suddenly is dashed. And it's really like it's snatched away from you. And you can tell you're not making any progress, you're not moving forward, and as a matter of fact, it feels like you're even behind where you were. And so how do you make that decision? Do you go forward or do you go back? Now, years and years ago, when I was in high school, very archaic way of thinking in my mind now, I took some workshop or a class, or maybe we spent an hour in life skills or something like that about decision making. And the formula was very simple, and I thought, great, I love that because, I have lots of choices in my life. How do I make those decisions? And it was very simple. You get a piece of lined paper, you fold it in half. Anybody ever do this? On one side, you write the pros. On the other side, you write the cons. Should I go ahead to Egypt? Yes, no. And what happens is, the idea is that the side of the page with the most stuff on it, obviously, is the right choice. Well, from your laughter, maybe you have also experienced this. What happened for me is that I start writing down, I've already got money to go back to Spain, and I do know how to be a shepherd, and at least I can be back with my friends again. And, you write down all these reasons why it makes sense. And then there's the other part. And because that is the part that speaks from the heart, what happens is there's only like one or two things on that side of the page, because they cannot be explained in words. You can't write them down. It's a feeling. It's an inner knowing. It's something that cannot be spoken. And what I would find myself doing is think, oh, well, this isn't working out very good, so let me try to get some more, on the side that I want. And there was my answer. There I could see, I don't need to do this writing. I can tell what it is that I want to do, where my desire lies, where my heart lies. By my trying to turn the tables, I can see what is really the truth for me. So, I don't use this anymore, obviously. I used it maybe once. Or just even really, when I do that, it's really to see which way is my heart leaning? Which way is it that I really want to go, despite the paper? The paper serves a different kind of purpose for me, not who wins. Because you know what? When we do the linear, rational, analytical thinking on a lined piece of paper, it's rigged. It's always going to turn out to be more things on the side of our thinking than on the side of our heart. So it's a good method, although listening to the language of the heart is a different language. It's a different way of being. And so what the boy does is he does listen to his heart. He goes to where the caravans gather. He buys his ticket for a camel and leaves for Egypt, for the pyramids. He also meets an Englishman who is also traveling on this caravan. And he is studying to be an alchemist. And he has, traveling with him, his books. And he has been studying for years and years and years. And he has heard that in an oasis on the route that this caravan is taking, that there lives an alchemist. And so it is his dream to travel and spend time with this alchemist and learn the secrets of alchemy. And as they travel, the Englishman, I can just see him sitting up on his camel with his face buried in his books. And he's reading and he's studying and he's taking notes and he's, taking different books. He has no idea where he is. He has no idea of his surroundings. He doesn't know where they're going. He doesn't see the direction. He notices no one or anyone around him. He is totally immersed in his books, trying desperately to find the secret of alchemy. Now, Santiago, the boy, actually, he used to carry a book with him. I don't know if anybody remembers why he carried a book. Because it's very useful as a pillow. And on the first couple of days out on the camel, he opened the book and thought, so he got rid of the book. Because Santiago's approach to learning about life is to observe what is around him. And he watches the desert. And he notices sometimes the sand is very firm and rocky, and sometimes it's very soft and deep. And he watches when the hawks come out in the early morning to hunt and to fly. And he listens to the wind. And he hears the camel drivers talking at night. He does not understand their language, but what he hears is the fear and the tension in their conversation. And what looked like, at the beginning, just an empty expanse of sand, he sees is full of life, is full of wisdom, of messages, of understanding. So around the campfire at night, Santiago talks to the Englishman and he says, "Tell me about alchemy. What is this? I want to learn." And so the Englishman gives Santiago some of his books. And Santiago reads them for a couple of days, and then, it just doesn't make any sense. It's obscure, there's texts, and there's mysteries, and there's, pages are missing. And so he decides to give up the study of alchemy. But he questions. He's a curious boy, and so he questions the Englishman. And he says to the Englishman, "Can't you just observe men and omens in order to understand alchemy?" And the Englishman is very irritated, and he replies, "Alchemy is a serious discipline. Every step has to be followed as it was followed by the masters. Men have spent their entire lives studying and reading the books that would tell them the secrets of alchemy. It's a purification process." So there's different kinds of learning for different people, isn't there? Perhaps you've experienced this. I certainly have. I really want to know about something, so I try to read about it. And it just, I'm reading the words and the meaning is just escaping me. The meaning, there is no meaning for me. And so we might think, then this isn't for me, because I'm not disciplined. Because I'm not going to spend my whole life reading these books. Because I'm not taking this seriously enough and doing exactly as I'm told. And yet we find out through this book that there is another way of learning and another way of knowing. So the boy thinks to himself, it's a purification process. And he reflects on his life over the last few months. And he says, I have been going through a purification process. I was doing that when I was traveling with my sheep. I was learning about cleaning and purifying myself when I was with the crystal merchant, making my money back. I'm going through a purification process now in the desert as I observe and watch what goes on. He is paying attention to everything around him. And he starts to believe that one could learn alchemy in daily life through his own practice, through his own way of learning, through daily life, not through the books. And he feels his connection as he travels in the desert. Not only is he observing what is going on, but through that observation he can feel the connection that he has with all life. That there is a soul of the desert that is interacting with his soul. That there is a soul of the cosmos that is one with the soul of the people around him. Of all life, the camels, the snakes, the hawks, the rocks. So he stays alert. And in his alertness, he is picking up on this fear that is spreading throughout the caravan. This fear that he doesn't understand, that he hears the camel drivers talking about. And so one night he asked the camel driver if it is the fear of war that is what he is picking up on. If he's afraid of war. And so it says, the camel driver, though, seemed not to be very concerned with the threat of war. I'm alive, he said to the boy as he ate a bunch of dates. When I'm eating, that's all I think about. If I'm on the march, I just concentrate on marching. If I have to fight, it will be just as good a day to die as any other. Because I don't live in either my past or my future. I'm interested only in the present. Because life is the moment we are living right now. Life is the moment we are living right now. So one night, Santiago is out walking in the dunes. And he meets the alchemist. The one that the Englishman is searching for. The alchemist recognizes Santiago as his apprentice. He recognizes Santiago's wisdom, his understanding, his beingness, his grasping the sense of allness, of the oneness in the allness. And together they leave the caravan and travel in the desert. And so Santiago goes, here's my chance. I can actually ask the alchemist about what I am doing, what it is that I'm trying to do. And all those books and all that study. And the alchemist, very wise man, says, perhaps if you were in a laboratory of alchemy, this would be the right time to study fire and lead. But you are in the desert, so immerse yourself in it. The desert will give you an understanding of the world. Anything on the face of the earth will do that. You don't even have to understand the desert. All you have to do is contemplate a single grain of sand, and you will see in it the marvels of all creation. And Santiago asks, how do I immerse myself in the desert? And the alchemist says, listen to your heart. It knows all things because it came from the soul of the world. You will never be able to escape from your heart, so it is better to listen to what it has to say. Very true. I've certainly experienced that in times when I'm not sure if my mic is where it's supposed to be right now. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Times when I let my rational mind and my one side of the paper rule over what was really true for me in my heart. And what happens is that we think that we are ignoring that and that it'll go away, it'll just die. But the fact is that any opportunity that we give it a half a chance, we will hear that longing, that message from our hearts. It doesn't go away. It's part of us as much as our breath is a part of us. So I think the alchemist is wise when he says, listen to your heart. It's part of you. It's not going to go away. So you might as well engage it in the conversation of your life. So the boy is beginning to learn. He's beginning to learn to pay attention to the wisdom of his heart and to listen to it. He's learning to pay attention to where he is and his surroundings. And this will come in be a very valuable piece of information for him later. He has no idea. Right now I'd like to share with you a little video clip of someone who is also doing this, who is living in the moment, paying attention to what is hers to do. She lives on the other side of the world, at a very small island. She probably has only contact with a few people. But a National Geographic photographer was sent out to interview her. And this man, DeWitt Jones, is a wonderful, not only photographer, he's won many awards. He's been photographing for National Geographic for over 20 years. But he pays attention. I think in his art he needs to do that. That what he thinks he wants to take a picture of is sometimes not what actually is the picture that is trying to speak to him. So he not only gets a glimpse of many people in many different parts of the world, but he's also paying attention to the wisdom that they share in that moment. And so we'll just listen to this very short clip here.
Her name was Marion Campbell, and she was the finest weaver in all of Scotland. She was a national treasure. She'd been cited by the Queen, and she lived in the tiny town of Plochrapool. And I had to photograph her, and I went to her house. I knocked on the door. She came out, lovely woman. And she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm from National Geographic, and I want to photograph you." And she said, "Wait, my brother is very sick upstairs. He may be dying, and I'm taking care of him." I felt like a complete idiot, you know. I mean, why? I began to apologize. I backed off, and she stopped me, and she said, wait, give me an hour, and I'll be ready. And she closed the door. And I wandered around the village thinking of the extraordinary presence of this woman. Why, when her brother was dying, would she give me time? And then I heard the hand shuttle being thrown across her loom. And I found her in her weaving shed, lit only by the light of the window. And she showed me the yarn that she'd spun by hand. And she told me how she'd gone into the fields and scraped the lichens off the rock to make her dyes. And I was still nervous and embarrassed. I took a few quick photographs, and I said, thank you, fine, I got it. And I started to leave, and again she stopped me. And she took me into her house. And she'd put out biscuits, and she'd made tea. And she wouldn't eat till I had eaten. And she invited me into her living room, and she stoked the peat fire, and we sat together. And she talked quietly and simply, and I kept thinking I was in the presence of a great sage, and I was waiting for some great gift of wisdom. And finally I said, "What do you think about when you weave?" And she said, I wonder if I'll run out of thread. It wasn't exactly what I thought I'd hear, you know. And she must have seen my discomfort, because she smiled at me and she cocked her head and she said, "When I weave, I weave." And in my own mind I heard, "When I weave, I weave." When I photograph, I photograph. When I serve, I serve. When I celebrate, I celebrate. There's no use walking anywhere to preach unless you're walking as you're preaching. And that evening, through her actions and her words, Marion Campbell showed me what it might be like to soar. She was who she was, with discipline, with grace, with total lack of ego. She was a thermal rider. Not just the best in the world, but the best for the world.
What a great message. When I weave, I weave. Talk about paying attention to where you are, what you're doing, resisting the temptation to dwell or ruminate or regret the past, or to revel in the past. Resisting the temptation to live in the future, to plan, to project, and to live in the moment, paying attention. First to her brother who needed her, then to the photographer, then to tea, then to sitting by the fire. I think those are great lessons for all of us. She's obviously listening to her heart, and Santiago learning to listen to his heart, learning to pay attention to where we are, to what we are doing, and to remembering the trusting in that connection of all life that is present in the very moment, right where we are, right now. So let's just take those thoughts, please, into our closing prayer. Let me say thank you, Mother, Father, God, for this incredible combination, this incredible integral being that we are, of our minds and our hearts, our bodies and our souls. And that we learn to trust every aspect of our being, knowing that it is a divine creation. And that we listen not only to our minds, but to our hearts, to our bodies, to our surroundings. And as we connect with all our part, our oneness in that allness, we know that there is greater wisdom, greater understanding, greater strength, greater love available to us than we have yet experienced. And so we say thank you for this wonderful being that we are. And we remember to honor and listen to all parts of it. And for this, we are truly grateful. We say thank you and amen. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to know more about us, I invite you to check out our website, unityvictoria.ca, or join us on Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. as we come together for our weekly service in the Victoria Conservatory of Music's Alex Golden Hall at Quadra and Pandora. God bless and namaste.